I'm going to be talking today about an evidence and gap map of research methods, tools, and metrics that have been used to describe pathways between agriculture and nutrition in the last 10 years. And this project was undertaken through the Amana program, Innovative Methods and Metrics for Agriculture and Nutrition Actions, as well as the Camel Collaboration, and it was funded by UK Aid and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we're all here because we understand the importance of agriculture and nutrition pathways, and coming with that, all of the complexity and dynamism and the difficulty to measure these pathways. Following the food price crisis in 2007 and 2008, there was a renewed investment in this space, and this has led to a proliferation of research projects and tools and methods. So we intend to we wanted to summarize and put a capstone on the first 5 years of Amana funding and lead us forward into the next 5 years of the Amana project, and also to sort of summarize all of these investments. So we wanted to map these innovations onto existing conceptual frameworks. And we intend that this will highlight opportunities for future development, especially through addressing gaps and also taking the more nascent innovations into more widespread use. So just to back up for a minute and describe what an evidence and gap map is. It's a form of evidence synthesis, and it is structured and systematic, but it's not necessarily exhaustive. It's designed to be comprehensive. And it will highlight evidence that exists and that doesn't exist. It's not going to meta-analyze or provide effect estimates, but it will give sort of a macro and micro view of the reports or the data contained in it, and it can be filtered and used by as an interactive interface. So we employed a broad search strategy, and we hope that it's both specific and sensitive. It took us quite a while to define the search strategy, since you can't include the word methods in your string. We searched 2 published literature databases, CAB, Abstracts, and Web of Science, and we also conducted an extensive search of gray literature over 16 different sites for different and project and grant databases. So we limited our search to the last decade to correspond to innovation and these newer investments. And then we included reports on agriculture and food systems, or nutrition and nutrition-related health. And just to point out that, of course, we are conceptualizing the whole pathway, but that is just a concept. So we wanted to include tools that bridge these spaces. But when you think about a discrete tool, such as the Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index, it actually doesn't explicitly relate to nutrition. It's just measuring one pit stop on that pathway. So this made our search quite extensive, and the reports are linked to one or the other. So we mapped these reports onto 12 thematic domains, which are the rows that you'll see, against categories of tools, metrics, and methods, which are the columns. And one more methodological note, we are building, the map has to be set onto a framework, so we're using the prevailing conceptual frameworks in this space, but those are very complex and dynamic, and they're arrows going every which way, and we tried to simplify down into these flat 12 domains, and we understand that they're not perfect and there are many overlaps. And we may address this later, but these are the categories that we have come up with for this exercise. So I'm not going to go through our whole flowchart, but I just want to point out that we retrieved over 30,000 reports when we searched these databases, and we screened about almost 25,000 of them. We assessed almost 1,600 based on the full text. And in this map that you'll see today, there are 930 studies included. So I'm actually going to get to the fun part. So this is what the map will look like when you open it. And this is available on our website. Basically, you'll see that the columns up top are the different types of tools, metrics, and methods. And the rows are the different thematic domains. So at each nexus, you'll see bubbles. And the size of the bubble corresponds to the number of reports that are mapped in that space. And the color of the bubble corresponds to the stage of innovation. We can't undertake a risk of bias assessment or a quality appraisal of these tools, metrics, and methods, or the reports themselves. So we've tried to broadly say, okay, this tool or metric or method is in its infancy, in a nascent application, or it's come into widespread use. So that goes from blue and the initial stages up to red, which we consider widespread adoption. If you click on these cells, basically what it does is it pulls up a running bibliography of everything contained therein. And you can search up in the filter button, and you can see the title and the abstract. And then what's nice is that you can toggle off and on different cells. So you may open up one cell, but then if you want to see, for instance, everything on primary food production as well as value chains, you can use the filters here. So then I'm going to show you the even more fun part of this. The map, by the way, it's quite big, so you can zoom in and zoom out. But the filters are on this tab on settings. You can change the style of the map, but these filters are basically a classification system that we gave reports. So every report is coded on the stage of development, on the measurement unit, on the setting and geographic application, and many, many, many other characteristics. I won't have time to go through all of them today. So you can see that this is very extensive. So if I want to see, for instance, all tools only measured at the individual level, I can choose that, and the map will change accordingly. So you can see that most of these are in the metrics space. Then if there are a lot of different characteristics that are coded. So there are lots of sub-themes and different domains. So if I want to see anything on the microbiome, I can update the map just on tools on the microbiome. I see a lot of those are in gene sequencing, and so on and so forth. And I encourage you all to explore this in more depth. I will point out one thing about this software. It has a limitation, which is that in the normal database, all of these categories are nested, but it's not possible to do that with this software yet. It's going to come and we're going to change it, but the categories are flat. So I've tried to give little tags that show you, for instance, when you look down in dietary metrics, there are 3 different levels of categories there. So there are other ways to look at these data. I'm going to show you very, very simplified frequency tables and cross tabulations, but just to show the spread of all of these 930 reports that are included, I want to point out that what's mapped are reports. It's not individual tools, metrics, or methods, because many tools are applied in different ways in different settings, and we really wanted to capture the spread of these and the diversity of how these tools are applied. So we had to make a choice, and we chose to map only on the reports. So you can see that there are differences between what has proliferated in the last 10 years. There are many, many analyses and models that have been applied, lots of different technology applications. But you see that there are very few new tools, metrics, and methods around research design, around qualitative tools, and in general, there's sort of less tools than methods and metrics. Similarly, with the thematic domains, there are clusters of reports, especially around water, primary food production, and environment, sustainability and ecology, and that is partly due to the proliferation of water footprint assessments, which if you do a water footprint assessment of maize in China, for instance, that would have been coded on all of 3 of those domains if it was explicitly linked to sustainability. So you see lots of different metrics, methods, and tools on diet, nutrition, and health. These are not additive. We coded reports on anything that was applicable, for instance, but on the other hand, the tools, metrics, and methods, the type of innovation is singularly coded. So these add up to 930. So I can show the distribution by geographic application. You can see that the Middle East and North Africa, the Pacific and South America are less well represented. And then this is basically an overview. Again, this is not additive, so the pie chart is a bit misleading. But you can see that there are a lot of different types of categories that we've applied and coded for. And this is just the top tier of classification that we've employed. So if I were to just look at the dietary tools, metrics, and methods, I see this broken down by many more different subcategories, and even further, under healthy diets, for instance, we have a listing of many of the different common tools that are used to measure healthy diets across the world. Similarly, you can delve down into other bigger categories such as water or food production. And I won't explain all of these categories now, but just to give you an idea of what you can access through the map. So we see that there is a proliferation of dietary tools, metrics, and methods. There is quite a lot around food production and ecology, but that's also partly because of the many reports on water footprint assessments. And then on the type of innovation trends, we see that there are many metrics that have been involved, that have evolved, that there are many different technological applications, Bayesian network analysis, which of course is not new, but has been newly applied to this space, and so it was included, and new forms of modeling and analysis. So I won't go through all of the gaps that we've identified, but a few to highlight are lack of qualitative methods, lack of study design innovation, co-production of research. There were fewer instruments and devices that came up when compared to things like mobile and web applications. System-level tools, metrics, and methods were not as common. You see a lot on the individual level or the household level, some on the community level, but not a lot that deals with that high-level interaction. And then we wanted to highlight a lack of sort of dynamic surveillance, ongoing or real-time research innovation. In terms of the thematic domains, we saw that there were very few reports that dealt with conflict of interest or power in the food system. We understand that this terminology is being debated and problematic, but for lack of a common definition, we don't see a lot with corporate engagement. We did not find many new tools, metrics, or methods around humanitarian contexts or emergencies, even long-term vulnerability. We have lots of food insecurity metrics, but that only is one aspect of long-term vulnerability. And then I wanted to highlight also that on equity and inclusion, we see quite a lot on gender, but that's mostly represented by the WEA, the Women's Empowerment and Agriculture Index. And there are many other forms of equity that are not that commonly measured, or there are no tools, metrics, and methods that we have seen come out in the last 10 years, and other forms of gender that are not in that agriculture space. So we hope that this is an interactive resource. We very much welcome input and feedback from users. It's going to be updated periodically through an automated search function throughout Imana 2, and so we hope that it will be a living and growing resource and that it can direct research priorities and policy and investment. And I wanted to say a big thanks to our collaborators, especially the Campbell collaboration, and the EPI reviewer support team, our advisory group, and of course our funders. I will also point out that there's a web interface, so you can, this is a searchable database of all of the reports that we have included in this map. So I'll say thanks and stop there, and I welcome any questions.